You have $650 million. Nobody knows. Not your neighbors, not your old classmates, not even your own mother knows the real number. To the world, you're just the quiet guy who drives a 10-year-old car and orders the same black coffee every morning. But tonight, sitting alone in this room, you're about to understand something most people never will. The richer you get, the more invisible you have to become. It's 7:12 a.m. You walk into the same cafe you've walked into for 6 years. The barista doesn't know your name. She just knows your order. 1 black coffee, no sugar, same seat by the window. If she knew, if anyone here knew, that the man in the faded jacket controls a portfolio worth more than the entire town's economy, everything would change. The way they'd look at you, the way they'd talk to you, the favors they'd ask for. So you don't tell them. You never do. This is the first rule you learned on your way to $650 million. Visibility is a tax the wealthy pay without realizing it, until it's too late. Rewind 14 years. You were 24, broke, sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate who never paid rent on time. You had $340 in your checking account and a spreadsheet nobody asked you to make. Every night after your shift, you'd sit at this same wobbly table and study one thing obsessively. Not how to spend money, how money moved. Not stocks tips, not trends, behavior. Why some people who earned less ended up with more. Why people who earned more ended up with nothing. You noticed a pattern most people ignore. The people who built real wealth were never the loudest about money. They were the quietest. So you made a decision that changed everything. You stopped trying to look successful. You started trying to be successful. By 29, your first business hit 7 figures. Most people would have bought the car, the watch, the bigger apartment with the view. You didn't. You bought something invisible instead. Time and leverage. You reinvested almost everything. You lived on roughly the same budget as your old $45,000 a year job, even when you were making 20 times that. People around you thought you were being cheap. Your own family questioned why you still drove the same old sedan. But you understood something they didn't. Money grows fastest in the hands of people who don't need to prove they have it. By 35, you had $40 million. By 40, you crossed $200 million. Today, at 45, $650 million spread across businesses, real estate, and investments most people will never hear the names of. And still, the same coffee, the same jacket, the same quiet seat by the window. People assume wealth like this happens overnight. One lucky deal, one viral idea, one stroke of timing. It didn't. It happened in 1,000 invisible moments nobody was there to see. The nights you said no to going out, not because you couldn't afford it, but because you knew what that money could become in 10 years if you left it alone. The mornings you woke up at 5 a.m. to read contracts, most people would find boring enough to fall asleep over. The deals you walked away from, not because they were bad, but because they weren't exactly right. And patience, more than intelligence, is what actually built this. You learned early that everyone wants the result. Almost no one wants the years of silence it takes to get there. There's a version of you, the 24-year-old at that wobbly kitchen table, who would not recognize the life you live now. Not because of the number in the bank account, but because of how calm you've become. How little you need to prove anymore. That calmness is the real currency. Not the $650 million. Because here's something the world rarely teaches. Money doesn't fix panic. It doesn't fix insecurity. If you were anxious with $340, you'll likely still find a way to be anxious with $340 million. Unless you fix the thing underneath the number first. You fixed it. Slowly, painfully, quietly. And that, more than any deal you ever signed, is the real reason you're still standing here today, with more zeros in your account than most people will see in 10 lifetimes. Here's what no one tells you about silent wealth. It's lonely. You can't fully celebrate wins with people who don't know the size of them. You watch old friends struggle with bills you could pay off in a single signature, and you say nothing, because the moment you help, everything about your friendship changes forever. You've learned the hardest lesson of extreme wealth. Money doesn't just buy freedom, it buys distance. Distance from ordinary conversations. Distance from people who now see you differently once they find out. Distance from the life you used to have, the one where a $50 mistake actually hurt. Some nights, you miss that feeling. The stakes felt real then. Now, the stakes are just numbers on a screen. There's a woman you dated for almost 2 years who never knew the real number. She thought you ran a small consulting business. She left, eventually, saying you felt distant, like you were always somewhere else in your head, even when you were sitting right across from her. She wasn't wrong. Part of you was always somewhere else, running calculations, protecting the secret, calculating who could be trusted with the truth and who couldn't. You've asked yourself, more than once, whether the version of you at 24, poor, stressed, but fully present, was actually happier than the version of you now. You still don't have a clean answer. What you do know is this: the people who chase the number without preparing for what it costs usually end up rich and unrecognizable to themselves. You promised yourself you wouldn't become that. Some days, you're not sure you kept that promise perfectly, but you kept it close enough. Studies on sudden wealth, lottery winners, inheritance recipients show the same pattern again and again. When people flaunt new money, they lose it fast. Relationships break. Family members become strangers asking for loans. Trust disappears. You watched it happen to someone you knew. A childhood friend inherited $2 million. Within 4 years, it was gone. Spent trying to prove he'd made it. Surrounded by people who only showed up for the money. That's the moment you made your final rule, the one you still live by today. Build in silence. Let your bank account speak a language only you understand. Not because you're ashamed of what you built, but because you understand that real wealth isn't about being seen, it's about being free. So here's the truth. If you're watching this and you're still counting every dollar, still working the 9 to 5, still years away from your own version of $650 million, the people who actually make it rarely look like they have. The flashy car isn't proof of wealth. The loud lifestyle isn't proof of success. Real financial freedom looks boring from the outside. It looks like consistency, like patience, like choosing invisibility over applause, for years, until one day, the numbers simply speak for themselves. You didn't become a silent millionaire by accident. You became one by refusing, every single day, to trade long-term freedom for short-term attention. If this story taught you anything today, remember this: wealth whispers. Struggle screams. If you want more real stories about the psychology of money and the people who built real freedom in silence, subscribe to The Money Man. Because the next story might be closer to your own life than you think.